Hey folks, it's Róisín Cure here, Róisín and Ruben. We're here today to tell you a little bit about sketching when you are stuck at home. Well, you're probably looking at this scene of a supermarket and thinking, what on earth is going on here? Well, the fact is, even though it's just a kind of a run-of-the-mill supermarket, it has hidden delights in it, and sometimes they can offer a nice bit of inspiration. I've been meaning to make a video about subjects that you can enjoy sketching when you're kind of stuck at home and you can't get out. I hope you can hear me clearly through all this crazy rain on my little roof here. What I want to show you today is a little sketch I did of some antipasti. And I'm going to show you a really nice technique that you can use for this. I used a dip pen and I used a brush. I think that was all. And of course a bottle of ink. And what I want to show you today is how a regular trip to a regular supermarket can be a great source of nice subjects for you to choose to draw. So I went to Lidl this morning and I look like Red Riding Hood with this, don't I? Just missing the Red Riding Hood. And I bought a few things that make up this little drawing. So we have the antipasto selection. We have the cornichons. We have the mixed roasted peppers. We have the sun-dried tomatoes. And we have the little pots that I used to put the antipasti in. And I didn't paint any olives. I can't remember why. But what I did paint was artichokes, roasted artichokes, and they didn't have them in stock this morning. So I'm going to recreate the still life, and then I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. And I think you're going to have fun with this one. It's a little bit different from my normal materials because it's a dip pen, but I'll show you the dip pen and I'll show you all the paints and all the other bits and pieces that I used for it. And hopefully you'll have a fabulous time and really enjoy sketching. Well, the sun has come out and the rain has dried up. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the dip pens and the materials that I used for this little sketch. I was in a pen shop in Dublin that's no longer there, I believe, which is a great pity. And I was buying a regular fountain pen, and when the assistant was chatting with me, he said, "Excuse me one sec," and he disappeared and he came back and he had a little tiny brown envelope with him and this nib was in it. And he said that a customer of theirs whose father, I think, was a calligrapher, he had passed away, and the customer wanted someone to have the nib that he used, someone who'd appreciate it, and that person apparently was me, and I was so touched. It was really special, and I'm really happy to think that I use it now. I use this nib and continue the tradition of the person who bought it. So that's the pen I use, and here's the ink. So the ink is called, it's called Document Ink, and it's by Deatramentis. It's a German company and it's handmade. But what I love about this is it's waterproof and it is clog proof, and I suppose it's probably fade proof as well. Although I don't know, don't know for sure, but I imagine it is because it's document ink. So I imagine it's for documents. Love this ink, comes in loads of different colours, but for this drawing I used brown. And then for the little bits of like fat on the meat and so on, and a few little dots, I used this Jelly Roll white gel pen by Sakura, and this is number 10, and it's really good. It's really good. It goes on thick and strong, and I love that brand. It's my favourite brand of all the white gel pens. And then the shapes of the food itself, they were all made in this Rosemary & Co. paintbrush. It's a travel brush. It's an R13. This is how a travel brush works, by the way. There you go. So it comes apart like that, and it means that the brush doesn't get damaged in transit. So I painted out, I drew the shapes with the brush for this particular sketch. I didn't draw them first. The paper I used is Hanamula, and it's 100% cotton, 250 gram paper, and I love this sketchbook. It's my favourite quality of paper at the moment. This one is an A6 portrait format, and it's very small, but it's just brilliant when you just have a little bit of an urge to do some sketching and maybe not a huge amount of time. So I do recommend that one very, very much. So which paints am I using? I'm using these paints by Roman Schmel. They are a really wonderful quality. I love them. I use them all the time. And the set that I have curated has 12 colours, and this magenta here as well. I always add an extra one. So really fabulous set of colours, and you'll be able to do anything you want with these. Beautiful quality. My favourites, and I use them myself all the time. I guess this drawing is about the colour harmonisation, and it's about the highlights on the little bits of roasted vegetables, and it's about the little white spots and the little white flecks on the meat. But it's also about using values, if you like, that's air quotes except with one hand, values to make all those white ceramics really, really stand out. And hopefully I'll be able to explain how I did that in this little still life. But most importantly, it's something that you can just, anybody has access to. If you have access to a supermarket, you have access to fun things to draw. And if you have some pretty little bowls at home, that's it, sorted. Okay, let's jump in and see how the sketch goes. Well, I thought you might like me to start with explaining what the colours I'm going to use are. So I have drawn out a column of boxes. Now I've used my Fude brown ink pen for this, and not my dip pen, for the simple reason that I tried a couple of times with my dip pen and it puts quite an uneven amount of ink onto the drawing you're trying to make. So I kept smudging it because parts were taking a lot longer to dry than other parts. So on the left we have the parts of the drawing I'm doing, and on the right we have the actual raw unmixed colours that I have in my paint set. So what I'm doing is I'm mixing them as I go, and then I'm putting the colours down, which is kind of a funny way to do it, but that's what I did. So then I skipped to the end after having filled in all the colours, and I'm going to tell you what all the colours are. So the colours I used are Aquarius Yellow, Aquarius Orange, Cherry Quinacridone Red, Quinacridone Magenta, Burnt Umber, Aquarius Green, Yellow Ochre, Sap Green, Burnt Sienna and Payne's Grey, which didn't make its way onto this chart. For the artichokes, I mixed Aquarius Green, Aquarius Yellow and Yellow Ochre. For the sun-dried tomatoes, I mixed Quinacridone Cherry Red, Burnt Sienna, Aquarius Orange and a touch of Quinacridone Magenta. For the cornichons, I mixed Aquarius Green and Sap Green. For the roasted peppers, I mixed Aquarius Orange and Cherry Quinacridone Red. And for the salami, I mixed Cherry Quinacridone Red with nothing. Step 1 is to draw out the shapes with a brush. So I've lined up all my little bits of meat and my vegetables, and I'm making the most simple shapes in the respective colours for each of those little bowls and for the meat. Then I put the background in, and note how I'm being really careful to avoid the shapes of the little white ceramic pots that I've got everything in. If you've ever struggled with the concept of negative space and what it means, well, the way I've drawn just the shape around those little containers, that is the exact definition of negative space. Time to add a little bit of detail, doing a few more strokes with my brush. No pen has touched the page at all so far. And in the little darker salami just to the right of the centre, you can see how I've made those little balls of fat stand out. And I've done that by making little swirly shapes with my brush. Now you might have noticed in the first little sketchbook page I did of the colours that there was an additional column. That was for the darker versions of each of the colours. So even though I've got all these lovely colours for my vegetables, each one of them comes with a slightly darker version, like the pinky colour, the dark pinky colour that I'm putting onto the salami. So basically, you're looking at your salami, you're looking at your artichokes and your red peppers and your sun-dried tomatoes or whatever you're painting, and you're adding the darker colours as you see them. Time to add some lines with a dip pen. So you dip your dip pen into your bottle of ink, give it a little tap at the top of the jar,
and then knock off the excess ink. But you should have enough ink in the reservoir of the nib to pick out your bits of lines. And you'll see that they're very uneven. In fact, I would say that getting used to using a dip pen is a great way to get used to unpredictability. And not having complete control over your line and over your ink. The only thing you have to watch out for with a dip pen is sudden blobs and sudden floods of ink. That can be very, very annoying. So in this one, I've used the dark brown, the document ink in brown by Detrimentus, and I'm using it to pick out my lines. I'm emphasising the lines of the containers, and I'm doing an outline for some of the vegetables. My big hand is in the way there. And I'm drawing the rim, the outside rim of the little ceramic pots. And if you lean more heavily on the dip pen, you'll get a heavier line. So I'm using that to fill in the little shadowed areas between some of the vegetables. It looks nice already, I think. But I'm trying to be sparing enough. And if I do feel like changing direction, sometimes when you look at something you're trying to draw for a second time, it looks a bit different, and that's fine. And do draw it differently if you think it looks a bit different. So far, I just have flat colour with no shading whatsoever and some rather attractive outlines in a dip pen with that lovely, unpredictable, varied width of the nib look of a dip pen that I really like. You can see here I've added lots of darker colours to the edges and the shadows and the underneath bits of the vegetables and of the meat. So this isn't really supposed to be a sketch along. It's more of a way to introduce to you the fact that you can have great fun with a brush first, followed by a dip pen, and from then on you build up all the dark little bits that you can see. So it's a very sensitive way, I'm going to say, to draw fruit and vegetables. And then at the end you can do a few little bells and whistles. You can flick paint on, and don't forget above all to leave all your highlighted areas completely untouched for the best result. You want nice shiny objects. One of the things I did that made quite a big effect was adding bits of white gel pen to some of the meat to capture those little skeins of fat as well. So that works very, very well. And you can see those little white dots on the cornichons and a few splatters on the artichokes. There's the lovely food that I enjoyed sketching so much. Well, there was one thing that I haven't really mentioned very much so far, and that is the shadows on those little ceramic pots. I used a neat Payne's grey for those, and I used it quite dilute. And I looked out for shadows on little pots that were being thrown by the little pots beside them. And then I deepened up between the pots, and especially right at the very little tight corners where they met each other. There was some strong shadows being thrown under there. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that little exercise, and I recommend that you go out to the supermarket and find some antipasti of your own. Set them up in pretty bowls and give it a go. See you next time.